is Chris Smith and Friends.
Three big Australian names from three very different worlds. Good evening and welcome to the program. Tonight on Chris Smith and Friends, television, current affairs and entertainment royalty, Ray Martin. He's a five-time Gold Logie winner who hasn't just reported on what's happening, but got his hands dirty making it happen. Joining Ray, the young and extremely talented singer, songwriter and actor, Samantha Jade. The girl from Perth was on stage modelling at age 4. She was in LA writing great music at age 15, hit the big time on X Factor at 25 and proved to be a natural as a TV actor 2 years later. And making up our trio, the vivacious country politician, Victorian Senator Bridget McKenzie. This is a mum who chased an education and a career after having a family, who then became the deputy leader of her party, the Nats, and has had her fair share of critics as well.
I can tell you what those that live out in the country don't want to see. It's bickering and inside backbiting. So they want us to just get on with the job. That's what we're paid to do. It's why we got involved in politics. No rules were broken. This program actually sought to put much needed funds into local sporting clubs. It's been an immense honour and privilege to have served the Australian people as a National Party minister in 2 coalition governments.
A quick apology for the bloodshot eye. I've had a bit of eye surgery in the last few days, but it is recovering. Bridget McKenzie grew up in the little town of Benalla in rural Victoria, but was so fascinated by politics, she signed up to the National Party as a teenager. Fast forward to 2017, and Bridget is the federal deputy party leader and agriculture minister. Even before we knew what a pandemic was, this senator was making decisions to control African swine flu here. And as we know, she's also an experienced hand in a firestorm too, the political variety, not the natural kind. Bridget McKenzie, welcome to the couch. Good to have you here.
Fantastic to be here, Chris.
Let's start with the now and the lockdown. You're in rural Victoria, Albury-Wodonga district. You're wearing masks. For some reason, I still haven't worked out, and you're still having to do things under restrictions. What the hell is happening in rural Victoria?
Yeah, look, Chris, you've summarised it really perfectly. We've been COVID-free for months. Many of our districts have never had a COVID case in the whole 8 months that we've seen this global pandemic on our shores. And yet we've had kids unable to attend schools, we've had workers unable to get to work, we've had border restrictions. And, you know, Dan's got us wearing masks outside in public. We cannot leave the house without having to mask up. Now, I get we've got to treat this virus seriously. It's highly contagious, but we've also got to do things sensibly. And regional Victoria has been COVID-free in the main for the whole time. And we need to be getting our businesses open, people back to work and getting on with the recovery. As
most of my friends in the bush say, rural areas by definition, are separated. It is self-isolation on a permanent basis.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a primary producer, you know, you might not go into town week on week. You might only go in once a month to do your shopping. The distance between us as individuals and as communities, as you say, socially distances us beautifully. And we take it seriously. We're very compliant, conscientious citizens. You saw where we had a community breakout in a little town called Colac down in the southwest. Their contact tracing on the, Bush Telegraph was a lot better than anything the Premier could provide, and they shut it down really quickly as a community. Yeah. And self-isolated, took that sense of responsibility seriously.
OK, but on a family basis, you have members of your family in Melbourne in a complete lockdown. When was the last time you hugged all your kids?
Oh, Chris, I haven't seen 3 of my 4 children since February, and the way things are going, I'm hoping I get to see them for Christmas. They're all doing the right thing, like my friends are as well. We catch up. I'm probably hearing more from them than I ever have with the kids. They're all adults. Getting calls to mummy's been great. But, I think Melburnians have been doing it incredibly tough, and they're not seeing reward for effort. And our small business community as well is really feeling the pinch. Some
of the pictures coming out of urban areas are just horrific. Lease sign after lease sign, for sale sign after for sale sign. There are businesses, no matter how much JobKeeper helped them, will not get back on their feet, will not restart in the next decade.
Absolutely, and I think that's a real tragedy. Our country isn't built by government departments, state or federal. It's built by the entrepreneurial spirit and get up and go of Australians. So we need to restore that sense of hope and that can-do attitude to our small business community. I saw a great poster being shot through the media yesterday, where if you stand with Dan, you can pay an extra $1 this Friday for your coffee in Melbourne at the cafes. And I think that is our business communities trying to let their customers know that it's not OK what's being done to them and their families.
Let's not forget this. There has been a widespread prime ineptitude, both at the government level, on this Gang of Eight committee, and at a departmental level. It's been from go to woe ineptitude through and through.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've seen a shocking failure of governance, that in a liberal democracy with all the checks and balances in it that ours should have, that we've seen minister after minister, departmental official after departmental official for months deny who knew what when. It's absolutely unconscionable. And it's only really, Chris, been the media pursuing this as a means and with an intensity that is starting to see real results and the real answers come out. But at the end of the day, our Premier reckons the buck stops with him, and I'm hoping come election time Victorians will remember what he's put them through with no medical evidence. That
is the best acid test. Let's extrapolate the ineptitude of the Victorian government to the project that's going on in terms of the Murray Basin Rail Project, a multi-billion-dollar project, such great advantages for rural Victorian farmers, and yet I'm hearing that even in this project, putting a railway between point A and point B, they've stuffed it up.
Yeah, this is a classic case of failure to implement. Jacinta Allen, the State Transport Minister, I'm yet to see a major project she's delivered on time and on budget when she's partnered with the federal government. We made commitments, funding commitments, and agreed planning in 2015 to this project. It's going to, for your viewers, it's basically going to get heaps of grain that's grown up in the Mallee off the road and road trains onto rail and safely get it down to port to get it to markets around the world. It's going to be great for road safety and great saving of time. Everyone agreed this was a great project. We're going to go to a standard gauge. Our state government has stuffed this project up to the point that they've laid steel from 1912
Stop.
In the 21st century. The Victorian Auditor-General delivered a scathing report on this project and on the department and the minister. And yet we've been waiting for a revised business case to get this project up and going. We stand committed to still get this completed. And it wasn't till yesterday that they released a business case which basically turns their back on our grain growers, turns their back on our road safety outcomes and says they're not going to put any more money into this project unless, again, the federal government stumps up.
And farmers are losers once again.
Absolutely. And you will have heard from the Victorian Farmers Federation how furious they are. They've had to wait already 5 years for this project. It was supposed to be completed last year. But, you know, unless it exists within that sphere of Metro Melbourne, Daniel Andrews' government couldn't give a brass razoo, shall we say, about what happens beyond the boundary of Melbourne. And you saw that with the COVID response and you see it with the infrastructure investment on the Murray Basin Rail Project.
A couple of additional questions about the COVID response. He stands up on a daily basis. It's well over 100 press conferences in a row. Obviously, he thinks he can talk himself out of just about everything because he does have the gift of the gab. He's been caught out to a large degree by what Peter Credlin, my colleague here, has done. And then she's being attacked by the media in Victoria because she's not some kind of credentialed journalist. I didn't know we had a certificate we got, and I don't know, maybe I missed out on the certificate. What's the problem?
Well, I completely agree. It wasn't just Peter's great work that uncovered. Rachel Blacksondale from The Australian has been pursuing this for months. I think what you're seeing is a very glass jaw by the state premier. And I think it's fantastic that strong female role models such as Peter Credlin and Rachel and others are actually standing up and asking the tough questions. He doesn't like scrutiny, clearly. He shut down Parliament as the one area that citizens can actually see open government, hold people to account. He shut that down for months to avoid questions. So I think just more power to Peter Credlin, more power to Rachel, more power to the journalists who are asking the tough questions, because Victoria needs answers. This isn't about playing politics or ideology or whose team you're on. We actually go to war in this country as one, as Australians, and what he has done through his ineptitude and his government's inability to manage contact tracing in a quarantine system has put everybody's job at risk.
Yeah, all you had to do is follow the bouncing ball, which was being bounced into every territory and every state in the same way. However, I want to go back and talk about another pandemic that kind of came and went, and you were Agriculture Minister at the time. Before we even knew what the word pandemic meant, you had to make some very drastic and quick decisions to stop the African swine flu from ruining the pork industry.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of as my tenure as Agriculture Minister was the African swine fever knocked out a third of the Chinese pork industry, and their protein demands moved its way right through Europe into Southeast Asia and was basically on our doorstep. We had cases in East Timor, Indonesia, etc. And if a disease got into a country like ours, it would decimate our industry. And one of the great things about Australian primary production is we have that real clean, green image and status globally, and as a trading nation we want to see that maintained, and that means tough biosecurity measures. So being able to make the case, shall we say, to the federal government and get a significant injection of new funding into our biosecurity measures was one of the things that I'm incredibly proud of. And I know that whether it's our dogs that we sent, Suki, the black Labrador that we sent from Cairns to Darwin at a moment's notice because we knew we had direct flights from East Timor and we needed more checking facilities up there, to getting that more long-term sustainable funding model, will put our country on the right foot to not just deal with African swine fever, but foot and mouth disease and all those other exotic pests that could decimate our rural industries and agriculture.
I haven't asked you here to talk about sports grants because we could probably bore our viewers witless doing the ins and outs of when, where, how. Where do we go next with your 6,000-word statement, which is before the committee? All of that. I won't do that. But what I was interested to ask you about in terms of that, there was a time when I understand there were more cameras and journalists outside your home one morning than there were in all of Parliament House in Canberra. What a siege what a pylon that became. Not looking at right and wrong, but how did you personally handle all of that? You are a human being after all.
Yeah, Chris, politics is a tough business. Look, I am very proud of the Sports Grants program and what it was able to deliver. I fundamentally believe ministers should make decisions within appropriate guidelines, and I'm extremely comfortable that that is absolutely what took place. But you talk about the human toll. I won't say the stiff G&T and a lot of country music wasn't consumed post.
Right. This was your own medication.
But to be honest, like for me, it was about getting back to basics. Like, why am I in the Senate? Why do I want to do this job?
Yeah.
And getting back...
Did you think about not doing it?
No, but you have to reflect on that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You say, this is tough. This is a difficult time. So going back into my community, we'd just been through the bushfires, the Upper Murray, Tawong Shire, Tallangatta, etc., trying to help them. Then we had the COVID pandemic and the border closures for Albury-Wodonga. We had lines out the street in my office. We're the only office open for months in that community to help real people with real problems. And I think that really focuses the mind on why you're there and what you want to do. And, you know, I'm the National Party Senate leader. I've got an amazing team of tough senators from across the country that we're making a difference every day in the Senate. And just one example is turning around the government's position on the live cattle appeal decision. So I got back to basics and...
had a bit more time on your hands because...
I wrote a book.
Wrote a book during this period?
I have. So...
Can you reveal all here?
Not yet, Chris, but I'm happy to come back and do that. But it's about John McEwen, Blackjack McEwen.
Great.
So that's going to be released close when we're unveiling a statue in Canberra in December.
Excellent. What about your handicap?
The handicap's coming down, Chris.
You've been able to play golf too.
I know, yeah. So I'll shout out to Yarrawonga Mulwala Golf Club now that we're allowed across the border. I am enjoying getting out on the golf course. It's still 42.
Ah.
It's not great.
No.
But you've got to practice.
You've got time to get it down, haven't you?
Yeah.
And maybe you've had time during this COVID period to watch stuff. Have you ever sat down and watched television in the last 10 years?
No. It's interesting you talk about, COVID and what's it done for us. I haven't watched a lot of television previously. I got to see the Vixens smash the Giants.
So a bit of netball?
Bit of netball, been watching a lot of the AFL. I'm just, loving, can't wait for the Catters to do the Tigers over on Saturday. But also catching up on some of those Netflix series that friends have told you about that you never quite got to.
So you got to see Netflix. Wow,
What's this Netflix
with popcorn
you speak of?
and all that stuff.
Yeah. And get back to cooking. I made pasta from scratch on Saturday, which, it's probably been a decade, so, yeah. Hasn't been all bad, I think.
But that's been one of the consolations. Families have got
Correct.
together. We've done a little bit more exercise than we normally would.
You've slept your full 8 hours. And for me, having been a senator on the road a lot, and as a regional senator, you're right across the country into rural communities, a lot of travel, whether in a car or a plane. So
are you missing those airports?
Not at all.
No, funny
not
that.
At all. But I think you can still as productive, but it's less time in transport.
So why does a teenager want to be caught up in politics? Didn't you have other things to be distracted by?
I was a bit of a nerd as a kid, I guess, so no, I didn't have other things to be distracted by. But I grew up in a household where my mum and dad were heavily involved in our local community. Things were discussed around the kitchen table, whether it's why the Herald didn't put more women sport photos on the back page, or Dad leading a local industry association and standing up for a fair go. So being a bystander in life when there are issues or injustice just wasn't probably a thing that we considered an appropriate way to handle your life.
But you had family before you went down the career, education and political track, which is different.
Absolutely. And I think being from the country, when you're a teenager, you want to change the world, right? You want to make things better. And for me, getting involved in the National Party was a way for me to help country people and regional Australians get a fair go. And it's the specialist rural party for a century and it hasn't changed. So I've never regretted that decision in a moment. But I got involved in the party, had babies, got degrees, got jobs, got involved in the organisational wing of the party because women weren't necessarily, heading off to Canberra from the Victorian division of the party back then. And then an opportunity to run for the Senate came up when Julian McGorran went to the Liberals. And so I thought I'll give it a good hard go. And, the grassroots backed me in and I'll be...
By nature. That's why we've created Botanica fragrances, infused with natural ingredients that are responsibly sourced. Botanica by Airwick.
Welcome back. Well, how do you introduce this bloke without leaving out most of his achievements, which I'll do? Let's try by starting with his international reports for the ABC's Four Corners and This Day Tonight in the early 70s. He became a household name from 1978 when he was given a pioneering reporter's role on 60 Minutes. The years on A Current Affair, The Midday Show and countless interview shows, much bigger and better than this one, entertain most of this country. There was the small item about 5 gold logies in the middle of all of that as well. I've worked for him, alongside him, and watched a lot of Rabbitohs matches with him in the NRL as well. Ray Martin, welcome to my TV show for a change.
Pleasure. Lovely to be here. Thanks, mate.
Now, hang on. You, as everyone knows, you're 95 years of age now,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
What are you doing? A comedy COVID show. You were starring 3 documentaries. You're on a rural media campaign, which we'll get to in just a second. Do you need another Logie or something? What's going on?
No, I don't.
What about golf? What about handicaps?
No. My mentor is David Attenborough. I did 30 live shows around the country with David Attenborough over about a 4-year period. He's 93 and he doesn't quit. So he's, if he can do it, I can do it.
I think Richard went to 97 or 96.
Pretty old, but Dave is just a fabulous guy. He's smart, he's funny, he's witty, he likes to drink, he listens, as old men don't, and he's full of fun. So he's my mentor. If he can do it, I can do it.
Surely you've had time during the COVID period, though, without the travelling, without the documentaries, to take stock like we all have. Have you, like Bridget said, actually sat down and watched Netflix for the first time in her life?
Yeah, I've done a lot of reading. I've caught up a lot of books. I'm a history nut. I was going to be a history teacher at one stage, so there were books there that I wanted to catch up, a lot of which we may talk about in terms of Aboriginal history and certainly the rights of, what's now being called the first wars of Aboriginal people taking on the settlers, the first white settlers, as everywhere they went. As we edged out into rural Australia, there were wars, and we tended to, you and I grew up in a period, and probably Bridget at that same time, when we thought that Indigenous communities were simply copped.
Rolled over.
Yeah, were Pacific. Well, they weren't. They weren't Pacific. They fought, and there were guerrilla warfare. There were wars that were great in the Apache Wars in America. We've grown up with that in Hollywood, but they really fought for their land because we came and took the land, which is what it was. And so I'm doing a documentary in Western Queensland on part of that, and I just think I know that SBS is doing a series with Rachel Griffiths, Charlie's daughter, and she it's called First Wars. And there's a move now, I think, to try and actually get recognition of the black-white wars in Australia in the War Memorial.
This is Rachel Perkins.
Rachel Perkins, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Rachel Perkins.
Yeah. Charlie Perkins.
Who's done an enormous amount of...
She's wonderful.
Yeah, history on this. I want to talk to you about this campaign you're on as well. You're on the warpath. Yep. And as I know, when you're on the warpath, get out of the way. This is about rural media.
Yep.
Now, as an old Bendigo television reporter, the essence of rural media was about your local television station, your local newspaper and your local radio station. This is dissipating. You want to bring it back before it's too late.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that Bridget's with us in this to talk about it. I grew up in the bush, in New South Wales. I lived in 13 different towns before I went to high school. My dad was pretty itinerant, and I'm a journalist. I have been for 50+ years, and I love journalism. And I think that you take the voice away from regional Australia, where 9.2 million people live, by the way. It's not just a scattering of people. You take their voice away, you take their identity, you take away their right to report, to have a say on their lives. And I think that's much worse than losing a bank, and much worse than losing IGA if you lose your media voice.
See, we're broadcasting on Sky News into WIN. We've got a separate station. We get enormous feedback from people who are so politically and socially aware in the bush. But Ray Martin's right. We start to rip out aggregated television stations and radio stations and newspapers. That can't be good.
No, well, it's not good. And the National Party has historically had a really strong voice in absolutely maintaining a diverse media offering to our communities. In many of our communities, it's only the ABC that really is that local voice, the local ABC radio, and that's been dissipating as well. We don't vote Green in rural and regional Australia. We vote for either of the majors and predominantly for the Conservative side of politics. So having Sky there articulating our needs and interests, I think you're seeing that reflected in the rankings and the ratings. As on WIN, people are turning to it in droves because it's speaking to a very practical approach, real-life examples. Paul Murray's in our communities in the way that so many of the other major metros aren't. And
you need more Bridget McKenzie's, though, Ray, don't you?
But I want Bridget to do more than talk about this. I mean, you mentioned...
Well, Ray, I have.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have, Ray.
Your voice is silent.
OK, so I will send you, when I get home, a private member's bill that I developed over 5 years ago to get the ABC much more focused on rural and regional...
5 years ago?
Australia. Yes, Ray.
But we've lost about 150 newspapers this year. WIN, we talked about, is bleeding about $10 million a year from news, which will go, once Bruce Gordon goes, it'll almost certainly go. Where is the national...
solution? What's the solution?
The solution is to change...
My concern is I want to see our papers supported by our local community. Yep. I know
we lost
local radio is very much loved by...
Lost about 40 already?
Rural and regional communities.
You see,
But
Bridget,
we need to
people-
have small businesses that can pay the advertising revenues.
So you politicians, you speak about this, but you don't do anything about it. What you talked about 5 years ago was fine, except we've bled money in television news, for example. The only alternative, unless you help out by changing laws, which were written before, the laws were passed before we had social media. So at the moment, Channel 9 and Channel 7, Channel 10 can stream their programs into regional Australia. They have no connection. They've got no networking. They've got no salespeople. They don't give a rat's about the local media. They're just coming from Sydney, and then we've got Google, and we've got Facebook, and we've got Netflix, all the things that Chris talked about. Why aren't you beating the drum? Why is the National Party and the Labor Party and the Independents who run regional Australia? Why aren't you concerned about this? Why don't I hear you talk about it?
Chris and Ray, I agree with you.
Well, what are you doing?
Well, I'm actually moving legislation in Parliament. I'm meeting with the Minister to have that exact conversation.
The coalition...
Hugh from Channel 9 and I had a big blue about this. I said, you're coming in over the top of our regional, right, by live streaming. This is years ago when...
To be fair to Bridget, I've had conversations with Bridget about this prior to today. So she's on the... But I think there are members senior, whether it's the National Party or the Coalition, that need a good kick up the backside. Don't you agree?
The Coalition has had a proposal from the regional television networks. Now, they are competitive. They don't like being in bed together. They are in this one because the laws are unfair.
They're from the bygone era.
They're absolutely...
How do they change? What would you change?
Well, they've had a proposal in Cabinet for about 11 months, and the Minister has sat on his hands on that particular one without the National Party getting up in for the rent. What we need to change is the laws that allow more than one voice, which is the 1970s update of the 1990s in Australia. We need to save regional television. We need to save regional radio.
But doesn't it have to make economic sense as well?
And it doesn't at the moment because they can't compete. Yeah. At the moment, they're fighting with one hand tied behind their back. They've got, all their sales men and women, their transmitters, their administration people. They've got to pay for them.
Yep.
If people stream from Sydney or from Melbourne, as 7, 9, 10 does, or Netflix, they pay nothing.
OK, let's do more on this.
So for me, at a first principles level, what I want to see out of any reform that comes out of the campaign that Ray's running or the Minister's decision are that we actually have journalists on the ground producing news stories in my community.
Yeah.
I do not want to see people from Melbourne and Sydney, Brisbane, coming out and reporting on us.
Yeah, Bendigo's not Melbourne.
Correct. But people that are part of our community who understand how we live and operate, who appreciate our industry such as mining and agriculture and understand how essential they are. And you can only do that if you're from the regions.
Yeah. But
so any reform agenda must ensure we keep not just the masthead or the rip and reads out of wherever, but that locally produced news and current.
And we've got to move quickly on it. Now, let's do that at another time. You and I will do it again. Now, I want to ask you about the other thing you're on the warpath about. We are not all in this together, Ray Martin, are we? Look at what's gone on during the time that we've been locked down or not locked down during COVID. There are pay rises going to people. I just don't get it.
No, extraordinary. I mean, Chris and I were talking yesterday about this in passing, and I grew up in a time when I came from working-class Australia and, as I say, lived in the bush. And I never felt poor. I felt pretty much the same as most other people. The gap between rich and poor was fairly marginal at that stage. Of course, the Packers and the Murdochs and the David Joneses and all those people had made more money than the Myers made more money than the rest of us, but generally we're the same. Now there's a huge gap. I mean, the average wage is $89,000 a year for people who work full-time, $89,000. And we read now the boss of the NBN has just collected $3.2 million.
Bonus.
With bonuses and salaries. The boss of the post office is cut 20% of her salary. She's down to $1.6 million.
And it hurts at this time when people have lost their jobs.
It's incredible. I think it was the ABC, EBA sees them to get a 2.5% pay rise. So, I mean, across the board, people like myself and others who are lucky enough
politicians are putting their hand out too.
To still have, well, I think we've got a
You're frozen at least.
We're frozen.
Yeah. You've got a freeze.
But who are able to continue to work need to remember nearly 1 million Australians have lost their jobs.
But how has this happened?
And the small business.
Bridget,
So for the regions, we're on the lowest median income level.
No, I agree totally.
So
I agree totally.
The top 10 lowest median income electorates in the country, 8 of them are National Party electorates. So I guess you speak of an era where there was a lot more of an egalitarian feel amongst kids at school, whether you were working class.
I don't know what's produced that. You see, I think that's part of the reason why Trump's been so successful in America, because people have seen, I'm working my butt off down at the local factory, my wife's working at the 7-Eleven, and we can't put the kids through school, that sort of stuff. And I think in Australia we're getting there as well. There's that huge gap. There was something the other day from one of the companies that runs administration about, in universities, and this bloke looks to be in his early 40s, $32 million a year. He's
saw that.
How does anyone
make that?
How do you actually
spend it?
But who deserves that?
No.
To suggest he works harder than the bloke in the factory who's working 8 hours flat chat is ridiculous. And he's on 89,000.
I want to rewind the tape. I want to get all of this in. Midday.
Yeah.
And Hawke and Keating turn up.
Yeah.
You had a coup.
It was fantastic.
But you didn't know, none of us knew, what they had agreed to do about leadership. Let's just replay and just remind our viewers exactly what went on that day.
We had a bit of a spat last year. I mean, we wouldn't deny that. It was a bit of a spat.
When Australian voters go to vote for the Labor Party, they will be voting for Bob Hawke as Prime Minister for 3 years. Categorical,
for the Parliament. Yep.
No equivocation.
No equivocation.
I mean, as you get older, you get a bit more patient.
You used the word categorically.
Yes. Yes, no, I've been interviewing politicians and enjoying it for about 50 years plus. That's the best moment I'd had. They'd never been together before. Yeah. We didn't know there was this secret deal at Kirribilli House in which Hawke had agreed to step aside for Keating, but had basically gazumped him and decided not to do it. And they sat there. It was about 45 minutes of the two of them together. And even at the end, Paul Keating tried to get out of it. There was a fog in Canberra, and he said, no, there are no commercial planes. And Hawke arranged for RWF jet to fly him to Melbourne, and we did this thing.
Because he didn't want to be the subordinate, right?
He didn't want to be there, and also he just didn't like Hawke at that stage. And so the body language was just such that Hawke sat there like the alpha male with his legs apart and he was waxing lyrical, and Paul Keating was like the local vicar. He had his legs closed, he was there, and he was very tight, and he clearly didn't want to be part of this thing. And at the end, I think Keating had said that he was some sort of just a simple pyjama man or something, and so we bought silk pyjamas for each of them, gave at the end of these silk pyjamas, which Hawke accepted quite comfortably. But Paul Keating didn't really want to gift him silk pyjamas for a working class boy in the suburbs. No. But we had no idea. All the time, it was simply Hawke was trying to lavish praise on Paul Keating as the greatest treasure in the history of the world, and Keating was trying to say, you bastard, you're dunning me. You're not actually letting me have the job.
He's about to pull the rug from under his...
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
It was wonderful.
In terms of coups, there was a coup that was a coup, and then it wasn't a coup. It all fell into a heap, and the fallout was almost decades long until they got together before his death. Have you seen anything as bloody as the exit of Malcolm Turnbull from that parliament last year?
Politically, I think that was a really tumultuous time for the government, and I think it's a real testament to our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and how he's been able to build a really successful team, win an election and see the Liberal Party unified in a way that I haven't seen for a long time. I entered the Senate in 2011 and Tony was the leader. Tony Abbott was the leader. And so there's been a long history, I guess, of challenges there. And so I think right now, in this time under Scott Morrison, the Liberal Party is as united as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, if Scott Morrison goes his full term, it'll be the first time since John Howard.
And he's committed to doing it.
I want to play a game. I've got 2 minutes. I've got 2 minutes left before we move on to the next segment. I want to hit you with a couple of words, and if you can give me a yes or no, or just 5-second responses to these things. The South Sydney Rabbitohs, Ray Martin.
Oh, lifeblood. I thought 2020 was a really bad year until South beat East, our mortal enemies, by 60-8. That suddenly made 2020 a fantastic year. Bragging rights for 10 years.
That's a premiership. Bridget McKenzie, Melbourne Cup and horses.
Oh, race that stops the nation, the world. So proud to be a Victorian and have that iconic race as part of our heritage and our culture. Super excited on the trifecta, though, and I have a lot to say about Daniel Andrews.
OK, get ready.
Sporting heritage.
Donald Trump.
Oh, I mean, I can't believe I spent 10 years in America as the ABC correspondent. I love American politics and I'm an Americophile. I can't believe that close to 40% of the Americans may vote for him. He's a liar. He's divided the country. The suggestion has been that he's the worst thing to happen to America since the American Civil War. I think that's true. And the quicker he goes, the better.
Bridget McKenzie, Joe Biden.
Who?
Hang on, I know he hasn't campaigned for a week, but...
Yeah, look, I think Joe Biden's getting a lot of support. Ray mentioned earlier about Trump. I think Trump's election really filled a gap in American politics that needed to be filled. At the time.
All right.
4 years ago.
All right, don't go anywhere. After the break, three's great company, but four is just perfect on this show. Up next, the self-made superstar, singer, songwriter and actor, Samantha Jade. Don't go away. All right, welcome back. If you're modelling at 4 and winning talent shows at age 9, chances are you're determined to make it in what we used to call show business. Well, the Samantha Jade story is not one of entitlement. It's one where hard work, selflessness and natural talent combined to take her way beyond her dreams. Her star is rising both on the music scene and in television drama. Luckily for us, COVID has slowed up this juggernaut a tad, and Samantha Jade joins us right now. Samantha, welcome to the virtual couch.
Oh, thank you so much. How are you going?
We're doing very, very well. Now, the last time I saw you in public was having a look at a dress at Vera Wang's in Sydney. But before that, hang on, before we talk about the wedding, I want to go back to when you went down the South Coast earlier this year and went to some of these terrible bushfire-inflicted communities and spoke to the people. How was that?
Yeah. Oh, it was eye-opening, to say the least. I mean, I knew I was prepared for, you know, what we were going to see and, you know, who we were going to speak to and how it was going to go. But I don't think you can ever prepare yourself for actually being there. I think, you know, we saw so much on the news, we saw so many pictures, but being there was totally different. And I spoke to this incredible family who was so optimistic, which blew my mind. They were like, well, you know, we get a chance to rebuild our home and we are standing on the slab of concrete that once was their home. And they were so optimistic, saying, you know, we can rebuild. You know, I didn't actually like that room anyway. We might put an extension on. And they were just so optimistic and lovely. And then I spoke to some men at the Salvos Centre, which kind of gave me an insight into the whole mental health aspect of everything. And one of the guys said to me, I can't actually watch a sunset anymore. And that used to be my favourite thing, was to watch sunsets. And I can't now because it reminds me of fire. And so it was just a really eye-opening, you know, experience. And it was humbling and sad, but also really incredible to do.
I interviewed so many people during that period working from behind the desk here at Sky, and I got the feeling that that stoic, great Australian get up and have a go attitude was covering a deep-seated mourning that they couldn't reveal or wouldn't reveal.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I think in those moments, you know, being Australian means even more. It's incredible to see that whole, like, you know, get on with it kind of thing that my dad, you know, is the epitome of, that I've always looked up to. It's in those moments that you really see that shine through.
Ray Martin, bushfires. You've got work to do on this subject, don't you?
Yeah, I'm doing a documentary at the moment for Prime in regional Australia on the forgotten heroes, if you like, people who fought the fires, the very thing that Samantha's talking about. I've covered wars and civil wars and lots of traumas. I've never seen anything like this. The PTSD impact in our communities of men and women is, I mean, scratch the surface within 5 minutes and they're crying. Guys have got, no, I'm okay, I'm fine, lost the house, but I'm fine, and there are tears trickling down their cheeks. That mental health thing that Samantha talked about is enormous, and, you know, I can only feel for them.
Yeah, and Samantha, we had COVID on the back of all of this, so these people have gone through the double whammy. You actually wrote a song. I want to play a little bit of it right now, back to back, and it was a song written a little bit about what we experienced during the COVID lockdowns. Have a listen to this.
Got your back, babe. I got your back, babe. If ever you fall, I'ma stand tall. Back to back to back, always.
Tell us, Samantha, your intention in writing that song?
Well, you know, COVID obviously was just a tough time for everybody. And it was, I think, again, with mental health, very highlighted. I've dealt with anxiety through the years, and it came up in a big way. And I really missed my people. I missed my friends, my family. I'm from Perth, so they're all in Perth, and I'm all the way over here in Sydney. And I lost my mum a few years ago, and I usually always see them on like my mum's birthday and my birthday and the anniversary of her passing, and just big experiences like that. And I really missed them and my friends and the people who get me through. And so I wanted to write a song about that, you know, the community and giving back to each other and just having each other's back. Because I think that it was, it's always something that you know and you love, but it was highlighted so much in COVID when, you know, we're all in lockdown, unable to be close to each other.
Bridget McKenzie, we saw a lot of selfishness at the early part of COVID when people went out and panic shopped, etc. But I got the feeling that as we got the hang of this, we worked out a way to support each other. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Samantha, you raise a great point about the resilience of country communities, bushfire-affected communities, and then the broader urban areas that really reached out both over technology and in other ways to support each other. And I think that's sort of that showing of our humanity through these times of difficulty. Really, I think it's restored a lot of hope for a lot of us that when we get back to basics, we're at our best.
And Samantha, when's the wedding now that you've postponed?
Oh my gosh, we've had to postpone it so many times because our venue is actually in Melbourne, so we had to postpone that, obviously, and it's still postponed. We actually don't have a date now because I'm from Perth, so the WA borders are very firmly shut, so my family won't be able to be there. So we're waiting for those to open so we can plan again.
Oh, come on, you know people. Can't you talk to that Premier over there and tell him that he's part of Australia? It's not just WA. What does he want to do, secede?
I mean, I miss my family. I want to go home.
Yeah, I could just imagine. I want to take you back to 2004. Great little story that people will enjoy. You were in Smokey Robinson's home when you were in LA. Tell us about that experience.
I was. Oh my gosh, it was a crazy experience. So I got signed when I was very young, moved to the States. My whole family came with me. It was the days of massive budgets within the record companies. And I was so lucky. I've got two little brothers I'm close to, my mum and dad. We all went over there, and the guy who I was signed to at the time lived next door to Smokey Robinson. And I was always a Motown fan. My parents always played Motown music through the house. And my dad, I think, my dad's never starstruck, but that was the one time I've seen him be starstruck. He was like, I don't even know how to act. This is so amazing. And anyway, we went to his house and he made me sing. And I was like singing for these people who I've looked up to my whole life. They're calling me Miss Australia. And I was like, oh my gosh, where am I? What am I doing? I sang the song. Everything was good. Everything was lovely. Everything was fabulous. And then my mum, so they were like, that was so great. Let's bring out champagne. So everyone gets a glass of champagne, right? Not me. I was under 18 at the time, at 21 over there. Everyone gets a glass of champagne. They've all got their champagne. And my mum, who was the epitome of a classy woman, is standing there with her champagne, swirling it around. And she starts spitting. Like literally spitting. She's like, "Th, th, th." And my dad is, you know, like in his hero's house. He's like looking at my mum like, what is happening? I will kill you after this. What are you doing? And I'm just looking at my mum like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? She's never like this. She had been bitten or stung, sorry, by a bee. A bee had flown into her champagne. She'd taken a swig of her champagne and it had stung her on the roof of her mouth.
No.
Which was like, no, yeah. And so Smokey was like, he didn't even know what to do. He's like, don't sue me, because you know in LA anyone can sue anyone. So don't sue me. So that's my experience. We never got invited back. Yeah, we're never going back.
Now, Bridget McKenzie, you have a starstruck story. You and Bono were very close at one stage, I understand.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wait till you hear the whole story. Don't get too excited. The Rattle and Hum tour, Sydney Entertainment Centre. I'm going to disclose now to the youth hostel I was staying at. I'm so sorry about that single bed sheet. It was my friend. But anyway, strumming up for New Year's Day. And Bono said, Berlin today, China tomorrow, and then they played the song. And I went home that night, got a very big black text to the sheet off the bed and said, Berlin today. And for those who can't remember, this was a fantastic time when the Berlin Wall was coming down and it was a period of great hope. China tomorrow, and then a massive freedom in capital letters. And so the next night when we're in the mosh pit at the concert and they started strumming up New Year's Day, out comes the sheet. I'm on one end, my mate's on the other, and Bono just looks down and goes, them up.
Oh,
and we were
a Bruce Springsteen moment.
Thrown onto the stage, and I'm just like holding on to the other end. The other end was Bono singing with my friend. I'm just on the other end, just going, wow, this is amazing.
Wow.
And then we did a bit of running around, and then he goes, this is my show, get off. And
Great story. Now, Ray Martin, we could talk to Ray about all the great superstar singers he's spoken to and spent time with, but who let you down? Who was the person you were most looking forward to interviewing? And then when the interview was over, you said, boy, oh boy, I shouldn't have wasted my time.
Well, I guess Ricky Nelson, who was, you know, a superstar almost before Elvis, came on the midday show. And when I was a kid, I sort of admired and looked up to Ricky Nelson as he was a good-looking young guy.
Garden Party, and, great song.
And anyway, but he was at end of an era and killed in a plane crash. But I wanted to interview him, and the people who'd done the Mike Walsh show before him, the producers said, oh, he's a dud chat. He's a really dud chat. And I said, well, next time. We must do him next time. He died in a plane crash about 2 weeks later. So I never got to. He was one of those superstars who never appeared.
No.
But I have to pick up very quickly on Samantha's story about the bushfires. I was up doing this bushfire story up in northern New South Wales, and I went to Slim Dusty's home, Slim Dusty's 100-year-old home where he was born. Now, again, for regional Australia, he's an absolute god. He was Elvis plus one. And the bushfire is up there. We're trying to save. They lost 65 houses. They said the one house we must save is Slim Dusty's, and they saved it, and also the pub with no beer, the pub in Taylor's Arms, where he wrote the song about the pub with no beer. So, in the midst of all this thing, saving lots of people, they had to save a couple of important singers, his house and his pub.
Some people get priority, which is fantastic. Let's fast forward to 2012, Samantha, and then there was the X Factor.
Yes, that's right. The X Factor. I mean, I was so nervous to go on that show. I was truly nervous. I thought I'd never tried a TV show, and I felt like in Australia, people that I really idolised had gone on TV shows, and I thought it's the quickest way to kind of, you know, be in front of the public. And I do believe Australia is such a culture that, you know, needs to be part of the journey to support you all the way through, so they feel like they know you, and they do know you, and they're part of the whole.
You're not telling the whole story. The whole story is you didn't come from LA to try out for X Factor. You were working in your father's mining company at the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And my steel cap boots and my high-vis jacket. Oh, yeah. I was, because I'd go back and forth. I was trying to save up to get a plane ticket to go back to, you know, to keep working there. And my dad, who was, you know, working at this mining company at the time, I was like, is there any jobs? And he's like, well, we do have some counting stock that could be done. And I was like, I'll do it. So I did that for about 2 years on and off, and didn't love it, to be honest, and wasn't great at it. So I decided singing is what I need to do. So yeah, I tried out for X Factor, and the rest is kind of history.
It sure was. But then you've had acting opportunities. You were Kylie in the In Excess series. You've been in Home and Away. What do you prefer, and where is this heading?
I mean, I really enjoyed playing Kylie, although I was petrified again because she's going to maybe watch it, and that freaked me out. And I just wanted to do, she was happy with the role, and I, you know, portray her in the right way. Home and Away was so much fun. It's such an Australian staple, you know. But I love acting. Singing is my love, my first love. It does something to me. There's something about just with a piano or a guitar, just singing, or even just a cappella, that gives me a certain joy that I can't get from anything else.
That's interesting. Talking about branching out, everyone knows that Ray Martin has branched out to become quite an accomplished photographer. He's had photography exhibitions, etc. Are you still doing that? Are you still as addicted as you were?
Even more so. I've made my living, made my money, if you like, over the years from being a journalist and writing, but I probably prefer taking photographs even more so. It's obsessive.
Wow.
Obsessive. I go on a holiday with my family, even grown-up family now, and the rule, we sit down first breakfast and I'll say, "Now, Dad, this is a family holiday. It's not a Ray Martin photo safari." So I've got to put the bloody camera aside and try and just sneak out when they're asleep.
Yeah, that's terrific. And we'll show some photos of your work as well. Samantha, when do you think you'll ever sing abroad again?
Oh my gosh, I mean, I think, I mean, abroad, outside of Australia, I don't know, but I'm hoping next year at least, you know, to do a show in my hometown. We had a tour planned and we had to scrap it, you know, so I'm just hoping to perform again in front of an audience, because there's a certain thing that you get from that. Like, I've been doing lots of Zoom performances and, you know, those kind of going live things, but it's so weird. It's after a song, you're like, okay, on to the next, because there's, you know, there's no applause or there's nothing to feed off. So I do really miss performing. Hoping next year. Yeah,
fingers crossed. Now, I want to finish this program on an optimistic basis, because there's a lot to be pessimistic about right now, especially when it comes to the economy and people's mental health. Bridget McKenzie, are we going to fall off a cliff? Are we going to crash, as some naysayers are suggesting, that all of this stimulus won't work and it'll be worse from here on in? Or do you think there's some positivity in the air?
Yeah, look, I'm an optimist and I have a great sense of belief in the Australian people and their capacity to get things done. You see how we rebounded through the golden years after the tragedy of the Great Depression and the war, and I'm very, very confident of our resilience. From regional Australia, we've had great rains and a bumper season coming forward, so I'm excited because I understand we're hard workers, we've got our eye on the prize and we support each other, and we've been here before. We're going to get through this together.
Ray, isn't it good to see pictures from the bush with green grass and water and all the things we haven't had for 5 years? They're hanging on to hope, and it's a great sight to see, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And my daughter said the other day, if you really had to live somewhere in COVID, under COVID rules, you want to be in Australia or New Zealand. You don't want to be anywhere else around the world. We take instructions when they're sensible pretty well. And I think even in Victoria, what they've been suffering. So I think I'm with you, Bridget. I just think that I'm very optimistic. I think we'll get through this fine, because we know it's sensible to do what we've got to do at the moment and take a deep breath the other side. Have some fun.
I think you're right, and I hope you're right. Bridget McKenzie, Ray Martin, Samantha, Jade, thank you to the three of you for coming on tonight.
Pleasure.
Thank you.